Paul uses an early Christian hymn to help us comprehend Jesus' obedient selflessness on the cross and how God has made Christ Lord over all reality. The perspective of the cross becomes the way we rightly understand God, Christ, and our own lives, and fellowship within the community of Christ. Let the same mind be in you that was in Christ Jesus, who, though he was in the form of God, did not regard equality with God as something to be exploited, but emptied himself, taking the form of a slave, being born in human likeness, being found in human form. He humbled himself and became obedient to the point of death, even death on a cross. Therefore God also highly exalted him and gave him the name that is above every name, so that at the name of Jesus every knee should bend in heaven and on earth and under the earth. Every tongue should confess that Jesus Christ is Lord, to the glory of God the Father. Here ends the second reading. Thanks be to God. Then one of the 12, who was called Judas Iscariot, went to the chief priests and said, "What will you give me if I deliver him to you?" And they paid him 30 pieces of silver. From that moment he sought an opportunity to betray him. Now on the first day of unleavened bread, the disciples came to Jesus, saying, "Where will you have us prepare for you to eat the Passover?" He said, "Go into the city, such a one, and say to him, 'The teacher says, my time is at hand. I will keep the Passover at your house with my disciples.'" The disciples did as Jesus had directed them, and they prepared the Passover. When it was evening, he sat at the table with the 12 disciples. And as they were eating, he said, "Truly I say to you, one of you will betray me." They were very sorrowful and began to say to him one after another, "Is it I, Lord?" He answered, "He who has dipped his hand in the dish with me will betray me. The Son of Man goes as it is written of him. Woe to that man by whom the Son of Man is betrayed. It would have been better for that man if he had not been born." Judas, who betrayed him, said, "Is it I, Master?" He said to him, "You have said so." Now as they were eating, Jesus took bread and blessed and broke it and gave it to the disciples and said, "Take, eat, this is my body." He took the cup, and when he had given thanks, he gave it to them, saying, "Drink it, all of you, for this is my blood of the covenant, which is poured out for many for the forgiveness of sins. I tell you, I shall not drink again of this fruit of the vine until that day when I drink it new with you in my Father's kingdom." When they had sung a hymn, they went out to the Mount of Olives. And Jesus said to them, "You will all fall away because of me this night. For it is written, I will strike the shepherd, and the sheep of the flock will be scattered. But after I am raised up, I will go before you to Galilee." Peter declared to him, "Though they all fall away because of you, I will never fall away." Jesus said to him, "Truly I say to you, this very night, before the cock crows, you will deny me 3 times." Peter said to him, even if I must die with you, I will not deny you. So said all the disciples. And Jesus went with them to a place called Gethsemane. And he said to his disciples, sit here while I go yonder and pray. And taking with him Peter and the two sons of Zebedee, he began to be sorrowful and troubled. And he said to them, my soul is very sorrowful, even to death. Remain here and watch with me. And going a little farther, he fell on his face and prayed, my Father, if it be possible, let this cup pass from me. Nevertheless, not as I will, but as thou wilt. He came to the disciples and found them sleeping. He said to Peter, so could you not watch with me 1 hour? Watch and pray that you may not enter into temptation. The spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak. Again, for the second time, he went away and prayed, my Father, if this cannot pass unless I drink it, thy will be done. And again he came and found them sleeping, for their eyes were heavy. So leaving them again, he went away and prayed for the third time, saying the same words. And he came to the disciples and said to them, are you still sleeping and taking your rest? Behold, the hour is at hand, and the Son of Man is betrayed into the hands of sinners. Rise, let us be going. See, my betrayer is at hand. While he was still speaking, Judas came, one of the 12, and with him a great crowd, with swords and clubs, from the chief priests and the elders of the people. Now the betrayer had given them a sign, saying, the one I shall kiss is the man. Seize him. He came up to Jesus, and at once he said, Hail, Master, and he kissed him. Jesus said to him, Friend, why are you here? And they came up and laid hands on Jesus and seized him. And behold, one of those who were with Jesus stretched out his hand and drew his sword and struck the slave of the high priest, cut off his ear. And Jesus said to him, Put your sword back in its place, for all who take the sword will perish by the sword. Do you think that I cannot appeal to my Father, and he will at once send me more than 12 legions of angels? How then should the Scriptures be fulfilled? That it must be so. At that hour Jesus said to the crowds, Have you come out as against a robber with swords and clubs to capture me? Day after day I sat in the temple teaching, and you did not see me. But all this has taken place that the Scriptures of the prophets might be fulfilled. Then all the disciples forsook him and fled. And those who had seized Jesus led him to Caiaphas, the high priest, where the scribes and the elders had gathered. But Peter, following them at a distance, as far as the courtyard of the high priest, and going inside, he sat with the guards to see the end. Now the chief priests and the whole council sought false testimony against Jesus, that they might put him to death. But they found none, though many false witnesses came forward. At last he came forward and said, This fellow said, I am able to destroy the temple of God and build it in 3 days. And the high priest stood up and said, Have you no answer to make? What is it that these men testify against you? But Jesus was silent. The high priest said to him, I adjure you by the living God, tell us if you are the Christ, the Son of God. Jesus said to him, You have said so. But I tell you, hereafter you will see the Son of Man seated at the right hand of power, coming in the clouds of heaven. And the high priest tore his robes, and he said, He has uttered blasphemy. Why do we still need witnesses? You have heard his blasphemy. What is your judgment? They answered, He deserves death. And they spat in his face and struck him, and some slapped him, saying, Prophesy to us, you Christ. Who is it that struck him? Now Peter was sitting outside in the courtyard, and And a maid came up to him and said, "You also were with Jesus the Galilean." But he denied it before them all, saying, "I do not know what you mean." And when he went out to the porch, another maid saw him, and she said to the bystanders, "This man was with Jesus of Nazareth." And again he denied it with an oath, "I do not know the man." And after a little while, the bystanders came up and said to Peter, "Certainly you are also one of them, for your accent betrays you." And he began to invoke a curse on himself and to swear, "I do not know the man." And immediately the cock crowed. Peter remembered the saying of Jesus, "Before the cock crows, you will deny me 3 times." And he went out and wept bitterly. When morning came, all the chief priests and the elders of the people took counsel against Jesus to put him to death. They bound him and led him away and delivered him to Pilate, the governor. When Judas, his betrayer, saw that he was condemned, he repented and brought back the 30 pieces of silver to the chief priests and the elders, saying, "I have sinned and betrayed innocent blood." They said, "What is that to us? See to it yourself." Throwing down the pieces of silver in the temple, he departed, went out and hanged himself. The chief priests, taking the pieces of silver, said, "It is not lawful to put them into the treasury, since they are blood money." So they took counsel and bought with them the potter's field to bury strangers in. Therefore that field has been called the field of blood to this day. Then was fulfilled what had been spoken by the prophet Jeremiah, saying, "They took the 30 pieces of silver, the price of him on whom the price had been set by some of the sons of Israel. They gave them for a potter's field, as the Lord directed me." Now Jesus stood before the governor. And the governor asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Jesus said to him, "You have said so." But when he was accused by the chief priests and the elders, he made no answer. And Pilate said to him, "Do you not hear how many things they testify against you?" But he gave him no answer, not even to a single charge, so that the governor wondered greatly. Now, at the feast, the governor was accustomed to release for the crowd any one prisoner whom they wanted. And they had then a notorious prisoner called Barabbas. So when they had gathered, Pilate said to them, "Whom do you want me to release for you, Barabbas or Jesus, who is called Christ?" For he knew that it was out of envy they had delivered him up. Besides, he was sitting on the judgment seat. His wife said to him, "Have nothing to do with that righteous man, for I have suffered much over him today in a dream." Now the chief priests and the elders persuaded the people to ask for Barabbas to destroy Jesus. The governor again said to them, "Which of the 2 do you want me to release for you?" They said, "Barabbas." Pilate said to them, "And what shall I do with Jesus, who is called Christ?" And all said, "Let him be crucified." And he said, "Why? What evil has he done?" But they shouted all the more, "Let him be crucified." So when Pilate saw that he was gaining nothing, but rather that a riot was beginning, he took water and washed his hands before the crowd, saying, "I am innocent of this man's blood. See to it yourselves." And all the people answered, "His blood be on us and on our children." Then he released for them Barabbas, and having scourged Jesus, delivered him to be crucified. Then the soldiers of the governor took Jesus into the praetorium, and they gathered the whole battalion before him. And they stripped him and put on a scarlet robe upon him, plaiting a crown of thorns. They put it on his head, put a reed in his right hand. And kneeling before him, they mocked him, saying, "Hail, King of the Jews!" And he spat upon him, took the reed and struck him on the head. When they had mocked him, they stripped him of the robe, put his own clothes on him, and led him away to crucify him. As they were marching out, they came upon a man of Cyrene, Simon by name. This man they compelled to carry his cross. When they came to a place called Golgotha, which means the place of a skull, they offered him wine to drink, mingled with gall. But when he tasted it, he would not drink it. When they had crucified him, they divided his garments among them by casting lots. And they sat down and kept watch over him there. And over his head they put the charge against him, which read, "This is Jesus, the King of the Jews." Then 2 robbers were crucified with him, one on the right and one on the left. Those who passed by derided him, wagging their heads and saying, "You who would destroy the temple and build it in 3 days, save yourself. If you are the Son of God, come down from the cross." So also the chief priests with the scribes and the elders mocked him, saying, "He saved others, he cannot save himself. He is the King of Israel. Let him come down now from the cross, and we will believe in him." He trusts in God, but God deliver him now, if he desires him. For he said, "I am the Son of God." The robbers who were crucified with him also reviled him in the same way. Now from the 6th hour there was darkness over all the land until the 9th hour. About the 9th hour Jesus cried with a loud voice, "Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani?" That is, my God, why hast thou forsaken me?" Some of the bystanders hearing it said, "This man is calling Elijah." One of them at once ran and took a sponge, filled it with vinegar, put it on a reed, and gave it to him to drink. The others said, "Wait, let us see whether Elijah will come to save him." Jesus cried again with a loud voice and yielded up his spirit. Behold, the curtain of the temple was torn in 2 from top to bottom. The earth shook, and the rocks were split. The tombs also were opened, and many bodies of the saints who had fallen asleep were raised. Coming out of the tomb after his resurrection, they went into the holy city and appeared to many. But the centurion and those who were with him, keeping watch over Jesus, saw the earthquake and what took place. They were filled with awe and said, "Truly, this was the Son of God." There were also many women there, looking on from afar, who had followed Jesus from Galilee, ministering to him, among whom were Mary Magdalene, and Mary, the mother of James and Joseph, and the mother of the sons of Zebedee. When it was evening, there came a rich man from Arimathea named Joseph, who also was a disciple of Jesus. He went to Pilate and asked for the body of Jesus. And Pilate ordered it to be given to him. Joseph took the body and wrapped it in a clean linen shroud and laid it in his own new tomb, which he had hewn in the rock. He rolled a great stone to the door of the tomb and departed. Mary Magdalene and the other Mary were there, sitting opposite the sepulchre. Next day, that is, after the day of preparation, the chief priests and the Pharisees gathered before Pilate and said, "Sir, remember how that impostor said, while he was still alive, 'After 3 days I will rise again.' Therefore order the sepulchre to be made secure until the 3rd day, lest his disciples go and steal him away. Tell the people he has risen from the dead." And the last fraud will be worse than the first. Pilate said to them, "You have guard of soldiers. Go, make it as secure as you can." So they went, made the sepulchre secure, sealing the stone, and setting a guard. Here ends the gospel for today. Thanks be to God.